All right, everyone, welcome. Thanks for coming today to the call. We're doing this free coaching Friday. And welcome to the people that are here or listening back. And I was just going to say, for the people that are here or listening, if you could think of what's going on with the person that you're listening to and how they're getting coached and what might be similar about what you're going to ask about, or maybe even applying it to something that you haven't thought about in your life. And that is one way to have coaching be like this active process, is to think about what your question is and how the person who's talking, it relates to you. So generally there might be a nervous system state you go into, for example. So asking the same kinds of questions that I would ask, but for your own particular situation. Okay. All right. Well, let's just start with some coaching. Do you want to just raise your hands if you have something to ask, or you could unmute? If you want to listen for a bit, there was someone that wrote in an email, but go ahead and, let me know. And I'm happy to just talk too. But I also want to get to your coaching question if you're like ready to ask something. Okay, looks like we might have a little time to for me to read this question and answer that. Okay, so I'll just read it how she says it. I don't really know exactly what my question is, but now we have friends staying with us. I've witnessed what it looks like to allow yourself to rest and detach from any notions about what you should be doing with your time and energy you should be putting into thinking about your future and career. This is very challenging for me. And although I haven't been working for 5 years due to burnout, I can't say anything about this time has been restful or restorative. So there's been some significant events, and she says, I had an MRI today to see if I have a tumor on my pituitary gland, which I think is because of stress. So again, not exactly sure what the question is, but I guess it's, how do I create the environment that allows for healing rest? It's like, I want to have a medical diagnosis on my body at all times so that others know this rest is needed and is not a choice. Thanks for answering. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts. Okay, so this is really interesting, especially that last sentence, how she phrased this, right? Oh, I'm going to mute whoever. There we go. So it's like we might have this very, very subconscious belief, not that we're consciously thinking at all, but that you need to have some kind of medical diagnosis to allow yourself to truly rest. And that, basically we should push through. She's talking about burnout. She's talking about witnessing some people that came then and that they really seemed to actually rest, and says actually that it was putting pressure. It's something about, it's not the environment that we're in, because people could come and stay with us and be in that same environment and feel okay about resting, right? You might see some people that feel just fine with laying on the couch and watching a show, while other people would be multitasking or feeling like they couldn't lay down at all, right? And so that, in a way, when we're so dysregulated for so long, that does affect our nervous system and all of our body. And in a way, it provides us with that need for justifying rest if we have a reason. And she's not the first person that has this, like I said, it's not like a conscious thing, like we're trying to be manipulative or, like sneaky and I'll just fake this. No, these are real symptoms that come up, but there's this underlying like need to always be doing something. And that even when I'm laying down, it's not restful. So I don't know if you guys can relate to that, but definitely I have had times in my life where I've really, really, like been laying there and just thinking of all the things I had to do, making lists at night in my head to go to sleep. Like that's how I would soothe myself to sleep, is by like making lists of things I would do the next day. Yeah. So definitely resonate with that. If you follow the nervous system stuff, please download those free modules because it gives you lots of information. But flight, I didn't realize, like in our modern day, flight is not, we're not really chased by a lot of tigers these days, right? There's not a lot of predators, but flight manifests as wanting to be perfect at things, wanting to do better all the time, high achieving, feeling like we can't rest, feeling like we need to always be doing things. So that is like the modern day flight. And that has that activation energy in your body, right? It's just like this tenseness and this like urgency. And we can really, as moms or parents, we can be like, I've got to be in flight all the time. It's this, or if we're in pain, it's this find it, fix it kind of energy. Like think of all the problems, create problems in your head, solve them, right? It's just like this frenetic energy of urgency. So I'm guessing that from what she's saying, that there's a lot of flight going on. And then also the burnout part is freeze. So freeze is where you've been in flight for so long, or sorry, burnout is where you've been in flight for so long. And we can alternate between states, but you guys might resonate with what I'm talking about with flight being a primary state you go into. And then eventually not being able to sustain that energy drain for so long that we go into a survival state of freeze, which is just like preserve the energy, just this stasis. It's like the Walking Dead. You're going through the motions, but you're just kind of completely detached and not feeling a lot, or you could feel a lot in your body. Anyway, so that's freeze. And it sounds like she's probably has that going on too. So the question is like, how can you rest and really, allow yourself to rest and relax? And so that is where I would advise, like, I just did book club on this book, Anchored by Deb Dana. So if you're a book person and you want a resource with lots and lots of exercises about how to get into that regulated state of the nervous system, we could call it the safe state or the parasympathetic calm state. There's lots of names, ventral. Anyway, you want to get to the rest and repair state. That's the other thing. It's the rest and repair state of the body. So this is where your healing is going to happen the best. It's where your digestion is going to happen, right? For me, digestive issues, I was like so in fight or flight all the time that my digestion couldn't even absorb. And I had a lot of issues. And then when I started getting regulated, it's like my digestion behaved more normally and I could eat normal foods again. And there wasn't all this fear and nervous system activation, right? So how do we get into that rest and repair state more and more? We have to get comfortable doing it. Because if we've lived in high guard for a long, long time, we are not going to feel comfortable letting our guard down, right? Some of us even have it programmed. Like I really thought to be a good mom, I needed to worry about things a lot, right? Like it was kind of like part of being a good mom is not ever relaxing. So built into my kind of view of the world, my paradigm was this, I'm going to be in this survival state all the time because it felt unsafe to just relax and trust that, I could do some self-care for myself too. And that would be fine for my kids. That would be the better thing, right? And that's what we want to see is when we get into that calm state of the nervous system, the parasympathetic calm state or the rest and repair state, that's actually where we can connect with people the best, where we can learn the best, where we're more creative, inspired, use our prefrontal cortex. Okay. But I'm making a case for it because most of us are not taught that it's okay to rest or that it's okay to, take some time to do a hobby that you love or that your emotions are important or that your emotions are the most important thing for you over your kids' emotions. Because if you don't regulate yours, your kids are, you're just matching your kids' emotional level, right? So getting into the parasympathetic calm state more and more involves recognizing it and getting comfortable with it. Because if the nervous system, thinking of it like a thermostat, it's used to a certain level of activation or shutdown, going outside of that is going to kind of feel uncomfortable at first. So we need to do it slowly. So what I would advise is start looking for glimmers. This is how Deb Dana talks about it. Glimmers are those little times. It might even just be 2 seconds where you might get a compliment and you believe it and you're like, oh, okay, that felt good. Or you might look out the window and the sun is shining just right and it's glistening and you're like, oh, life is good, right? Like things are going to be okay. Things are working out for me. And you feel it in your body. That's what we want, is that body sensation of like relax and unclench and like a sigh, right? Like that. You guys all know what I mean by a glimmer. Does that make sense? In fact, I just barely sent this to someone. So I have it right here. A glimmer could be taking in the beautiful colors of a sunrise or sunset, the first mindful sip of coffee, sunbeams dancing on the floor, a beautiful bird song, a check-in from a friend, a deep soul nourishing breath in nature, watching stars in the sky, a random act of kindness. Did you know that even just viewing kindness like puts us into a state that is that calming state that helps with all of these health conditions, and like it regulates our heartbeat and all of these things when we even just view a glimmer. Okay, sorry. When you even just view kindness. Okay, and so someone's asking, can you help us understand a glimmer of what? So a glimmer is, okay, the opposite of a trigger. So when we talk about triggers, everyone's very familiar with like what a trigger is, right? When we're just like, that situation triggered me, or like when it's really noisy, I get triggered, or like, So a glimmer, instead of like this activation or this like reaction of the nervous system, it's like that calm state. And I say it as a glimmer because it's not like, again, we're not going to go from really high stress and high guard to complete relaxation, because the nervous system isn't going to allow that, right? It's like a certain amount of stress is what we need to have to survive. And we need to start to see, this is safe. This feels good. I feel good when I'm talking to my friend. There can be this suffering in the world and I can have some moments of feeling good. And that's okay too. Like it's just like we have this negativity bias. And so training yourself to look for something positive and what feels better, that's how you start to regulate your own emotions in your nervous system. I'm going to the chat here. Okay, so that helps a lot. Good. So there's a lot of research on the power of gratitude. Is glimmer and gratitude similar? Are they two different methods of getting to the parasympathetic? Okay, yeah, it's I'd say they're the same, different names for the same thing. Like gratitude is one of the higher vibration emotions, if that makes sense to you. It's one of the emotions of the parasympathetic calm state. So it could be calm, or it could be, happy, joyful, ecstatic, passionate, grateful, loving, even neutral. Even neutral is better than coming from a fear state. So even when we can have acceptance and not resistance, like when we can feel neutral or accepting, then that is so much more healing basically to our body. It's not taking our body's energy. It's not a survival state. It's a regenerative state. Yeah, it's crazy, right? Like these emotions really relate to these nervous system states, and they can be either depleting from our body or restorative to our body. And yeah, the power of gratitude. I wish I had my anchored book right here, because she actually has a section where she goes through and like she talks about a few of the transcendent emotions, and it's like joy, gratitude, forgiveness. And she says like, oh, this is linked to, almost all of them have decreased heart problems, which is right. Like all of those like powerful emotions and decreased risk of heart disease. Interesting, right? And then a lot of them have things like, one of them, I think joy was decreased inflammation. And this is just because they've only done the research on those things, I think, right? It's not because it only is joy that causes decreased inflammation. It's because they did a specific study measuring those things. But any of those higher vibration emotions or parasympathetic calm state. And you could think of it as aligned. You can feel it in your body, right? You know when it's more of one of those peaceful emotions versus a fear-based survival response emotion. Okay. So anything that's more of the positive emotions could be a glimmer. And are they different methods? I don't know that they're not necessarily methods, but like, yeah, you could think of I guess, getting to an emotion as a method of getting into parasympathetic. Yeah. Okay. All right. I think I answered all the questions. So has there been someone that's decided they want some coaching? You can just raise your hand. Did that bring up anything for you guys that you have more questions about? I can just keep talking, but I want to hear from you guys too. If there's anyone that wants to join. Does anyone have a just kind of basic question about like what's going on with their specific case that they want to talk about?
I have a question.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much,
But
Anna. It's getting
yeah, I mean,
awkward, but it's fine.
I'm not sure exactly like what the coaching part is, but I do have a question about like a diagnosis that I got and sort of like how to move forward with it.
Okay.
So, I've been having, I have had chronic back pain for 15 years, and I started learning about pain science 5 years ago, which was really helpful. But I just like, I'm always sort of dealing with some sort of health issue. Like I got long COVID for a year and then I recovered. And my latest thing is I got diagnosed with Morton's neuroma.
Mm-hmm.
And so three podiatrists diagnosed me with Morton's neuroma. And then I saw an orthopedic surgeon who said she wasn't sure if I had Morton's neuroma. And then she gave me an MRI and they didn't show the neuroma there. And is this sort of like a question that I can ask, or did you want like a more
No, this is
question?
great.
Okay.
I've
Okay.
treated some or worked with someone who's had that diagnosis. And so,
Okay.
yeah, any
Okay.
of those, anything you've said so far, those all sound like neuroplastic, like the long COVID for sure. There's people that resolve it with this work. And the fact that you had back pain for 15 years and is that still going on or was that resolved when you
So, I mean, it got a lot better when I started learning about pain science from a physical therapist. And
yeah.
then I read like Explain Pain by Lorimer Moseley, which was really helpful for me.
Awesome.
Um, I think I just go very sciencey because I have a science background. But
Yeah. Cool.
so then I did Curable, which sort of helped. And then this foot thing though, I'm just having like I'm wondering if it's neuroplastic because
Mhm.
the back pain to me is so clear that it's
Oh,
neuroplastic. It
okay.
comes to those and it's like
Okay.
much worse around my in-laws.
Okay. Okay.
Just
Yeah.
like, okay, this is clearly neuroplastic, and so I can sort of think of it in that way. But the foot thing, like, I'm sort of stuck because I just don't know really how to move forward with it because I started doing physical therapy, and my physical therapist is really into pain science,
Oh,
so
okay.
that's been helpful. But I just like I don't like does yeah, I mean, I heard that some people have Morton's neuroma and they don't have any pain. And so, like, I just, first of all, I'm not sure if I even have Morton's neuroma.
Yeah, I would say you don't just because you don't have it when they did an
But,
MRI. Like, I mean, right?
well, okay, so the
You
MRI
did
thing
the
is like,
MRI.
so they did the MRI and but then I talked to my primary care physician about it. And she said to really determine if you don't have the neuroma, you need to get an ultrasound. Like, the MRI is one way to do it, but then the ultrasound is something
Okay.
extra you can do.
Okay.
But then I don't even know if I want to get the ultrasound because I don't want to know maybe if I have it.
Yeah.
But
Well,
then I'm
here's
like, well,
the
maybe I should
thing.
just do it.
Here's,
So then I talked to the orthopedic surgeon and she was like, look, like you've seen three doctors who've diagnosed you with Morton's neuroma. Clinically, it just doesn't seem like observing you that you have this.
oh,
But then I've also had three
okay.
injections in the Morton's neuroma area. So I'm just wondering if that sort of cleared it. So this
Okay.
is me sort of like spiraling.
Yes. Okay. Well, let me just stop you there then.
Like, I just
um,
don't know what to do. And
yeah.
then, so I mean, my physical therapist is really good, and he was like, "It seems like you're getting better, so just ride that wave, keep doing the pain science stuff. That seems to really help you." Um, but then, like, I know that some things can be dissolved, like with brain training, but then some things can't. Like a
Yeah. And
tumor.
Morton's neuroma for sure can. Just because,
Oh,
just
okay,
like any structural thing like scoliosis or a herniated disc or a torn labrum or a torn rotator cuff, those
okay,
happen in pain-free people.
okay. I
So
mean,
you
that's what
can
I
have a
just.
structural thing and it not cause chronic pain. So even if you
Okay.
do go find out that you have that neuroma, like because you keep finding, you're just like looking with this microscope and really like adamant about finding all of the details, like you may find something structural in your bodies, you guys, because we do deteriorate with age. Many of us, I probably have arthritis, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So it doesn't mean we're going to have chronic pain. So first of all, just
Yeah.
separating that.
So the other issue, so the MRI did find like a tear or something, and that I have
Okay.
arthritis in my big
Okay.
toe.
Yeah. So here's one study, just as an example,
Okay.
okay. And you could just like maybe take a few breaths while I'm telling you this. Yeah. Okay. So this is one that I found when I was just doing research for my podcast. They did a study with young, healthy athletes, no pain, healthy,
Mhm.
and they're athletes and they're young, right? 89% of them had a hip labral tear,
Mm.
and they're young and they're healthy and they're pain free. So searching for all ends, all of these like little
Yeah.
things of like, here's a little malformation. It would be like saying like, oh, here's a little wrinkle and here's a gray hair and this is why I have all this pain. No, none of those things cause pain. So what we want to do, that's one thing that I want to just point out is we can have these structural anomalies, and what we
Mhm.
want to rule out is a tumor, or we want to rule out that there's a broken bone, or we want to rule out that there's infection, or we
Okay.
want to rule out that there's I don't love how they phrase it, but like
Oops.
such severe arthritis that it's bone on bone. But I don't think it sounds like, I'm assuming you're not at that
Mild.
level,
No,
mild.
it's mild.
And the degree of arthritis just does not correlate with how much pain people have. We only think it
Yeah,
does because for the first, since x-rays were developed, we only did x-rays on people with pain.
yeah. And I mean, another thing that freaked me out was like when I saw my physical therapist, he was like, if you get surgery, since you have such a history of chronic pain, it's just going to open a can of worms for you.
Yeah.
But then what if I have to have surgery? Because it seems like that's just like this.
I wouldn't have surgery unless you're like so sure it's going to work for you, because what they've
Yeah.
shown is people who catastrophize pain are
Mhm.
more likely to have complications with their surgery. They're more likely to have um, delays, or it for their surgeries,
Yeah.
they call it healing. I was saying repair in my head, for their healing to take longer. So I think he's right. Um,
I
and
think
here's the
that
thing.
he also said people don't really heal from Morton's neuroma. So then I was like, well, then what am I supposed to do?
Why would he say that?
Well, I asked him because I was like, is this something that you just heal from, even though I'm unclear if I have it? And
Okay.
he,
So,
usually people don't, like, they just manage it.
okay.
Um,
I'm gonna have to like
okay.
that kind of thought, like I don't know why he would say that, because maybe because in his experience, but
Mhm.
definitely those kind of beliefs are gonna promote more fear, and there's a painful
Yeah.
cycle. And I'm gonna read you this quote that I've been saying all day, and Terry just heard me say it earlier today too. But this is from the Boulder Back Pain Study. I don't know if you've read The Way Out yet. Have you read The Way
I
Out by Alan
started
Gordon?
reading it, but I've listened to a lot of Alan just like on
Yeah.
podcasts. I feel
Yeah.
like I already do
Does it
everything that he.
resonate? Yeah. The Way Out, I mean, it doesn't hurt, I
I
would say,
try it.
to listen to it. And if you guys are struggling with belief, maybe just listen to it over and over. When you like finish it, just keep listening to it. If you want to really just kind of reinforce the belief part of it. From the Boulder back pain study, the people who had the largest drops in their injury beliefs. So belief that pain indicates injury. The people who changed that the most had the biggest drops in pain. So basically they're correlating your belief that there's an injury with how much your brain continues to produce the pain.
I think I'm just having a hard time because I've just seen so many doctors and gotten so many different opinions about it.
In a way,
Like
that's good news.
everyone I see is like, I don't know, the first 3 podiatrists I saw were like, you have Martin's neuroma, we need to just schedule you for surgery. Like they were
Yeah,
just like surgery. And I
that's
was
their,
like,
yeah, when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
but then yeah, so I mean, I guess it's just like I've just heard it like I have this thing and then
Yeah, it makes
so it's hard
sense.
for me to like be like, okay, well this I can heal from when I mean no one has told me that I can, you know.
Oh, well, you're talking
Except
to
for you.
some people.
Like this is I don't yeah, so it's sort of
Yeah.
hard to
Here's something for everyone. Anyone who's in this similar situation, which I assume are most people, unless they've done a lot of work already in this area. The most common question I have asked is like, well, what about my case? Like, is this actually neuroplastic because of da 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 da, right? Like in my case, it's this, and there was this injury, or there was this accident, or what about this, right? So for everyone, what I would suggest is, if you want just a basic book about belief, like I said, The Way Out by Alan Gordon.
okay.
But then there are the fit criteria by Howard Schubiner, Dr. Schubiner.
Okay.
And his book, you don't have to get this book, Unlearn Your Pain, but if you really want to dive deep into like proving it's neuroplastic, you can do that book. It has a workbook. It's very in depth. But basically, the fit criteria are how neuroplastic behaves that sorry, I'm like, neuroplastic pain behaves that's different than if it was like something structural, like a broken bone. Right. And so one of the things, and you said, I picked up on like with your back, it would kind of come and go. And then
Yeah.
are you saying like with this, is it different? Does it not come and go, or?
It doesn't seem to come and go as much, but I did notice today that like it became a lot worse and we're going on a trip tomorrow. I think I'm nervous about that.
Okay.
But I guess my question is, can't it be both? Like, can't it be physical and neuroplastic at the same time? Because I mean, surely someone like
Why would
people
it?
have Morton's neuroma and it does cause pain. And I mean, just for those listening who don't know what Morton's neuroma is, it's when like you get like a nerve in between your toes gets irritated and there's like a little, it's not a tumor, but it's like a little sort of growth around it. Anyways,
Mhm. Yeah. So why would it cause pain in some people and not others, though? And why would it cause pain when you're more stressed?
well, I mean, everything is worse when you're stressed. So, I mean, I would guess that even if you had like a really clear injury, it would feel a lot, I mean, it would feel a lot worse when you're stressed because everything does. So, like, wouldn't it make sense that everything to some extent has a neuroplastic component to it?
Yeah. Have you heard the idea? And, maybe this just doesn't resonate with you, because I know when I was a PT, that's not how I saw the world. And it sounds like you're going to a PT, and, there's definitely like the Lorimer Moseley way that's just like slightly more structural, and then
Yeah.
the way of Dr. Schubiner, curable, The Way Out. Um, what they find is when people have less and less of that belief that there's probably something structural, they have less pain. So it's
Mm,
like, does it hurt to believe that it's probably not structural? No. Does it hurt to believe that it probably is structural? Yeah. So what they find is injuries heal within 3 to 6 months. So like a broken bone heals within 3 to 6 months. And what we want to see is pain is not showing that it's injured or harm, that it's not harmful. And the
mhm.
more you can start to believe that, then your brain produces the pain less and less. But when your brain believes there's pain, and so it means I've done something, or it's injured, or I'm injuring it,
Mm.
then that reinforces that pain fear cycle that we actually know when you have pain and then you respond with, any kind of like attention to it or resistance to it, your brain produces more of it. So what we want to start to see is when you can react more and more calmly to it, more neutrally to it, be the detective for the opposite, notice, oh, okay, usually when I'm on my feet this much, it hurts this much, but now that we have this, stress added to my life, it's worse. That's a sign that it's neuroplastic. And start those fit criteria will tell you many, many things. Like if it's at a certain time of day, predictably, that's a sign that it's neuroplastic. If it's first thing in the morning or in the middle of the night, that's a sign that it's neuroplastic. If it's has the quality of burning, tingling, numb, cold, hot, that's a sign that it's neuroplastic. So it's like you can look at this list of things and start to see, okay, there's like a few of them that I'm starting to see this pattern of like normal tissue damage wouldn't behave that way. If there's a neuroma that's actually like damaged the tissue, why wouldn't you feel it all the time? Right?
Okay.
So that's the length of time that it's been. After 3 to 6 months, we just know from brain scans that the brain has started processing the pain differently. And it
Okay.
processes in the area of emotions. So that's why it's so strongly tied to your emotions.
So could a neuroma heal though in 3 to 6 months, or is that something that you just sort of have?
I
It's
don't
okay if you
know because like I don't know that we ever do studies on pain-free people to determine if they have a neuroma
don't.
or not. And I just know like I've had something that I thought was a Morton's neuroma, and
Mhm.
when I used to tie it to certain shoes, and when I started dancing, I was like noticing a real pattern of nights that I wasn't like feeling good and like getting asked to dance or like feeling good about my dancing, and those were nights I had pain in my foot, and other nights
Mhm.
wear the very same shoes, do the same amount of dancing and not have pain,
How
right?
interesting.
Yeah. So starting to look, you can be your own best evidence. That's why I want you to get familiar with the fit criteria, you and anyone in this similar situation, and then be the detective for the opposite. Because what we know is our reticular activating system, that part of our brain that wants to prove itself true, will actually just focus and find the information that we already believe. So if you're like, every time I stand, is it like with standing, walking? Yeah.
Yeah.
And how long can you stand before you start to feel it? Right,
Um,
immediate.
like 10 minutes
Okay.
stand.
So
I'm getting better. Like before it was like I could stand for 2 minutes, but like I'm
yeah.
slowly
Oh,
increasing.
good. Yeah. So that graded exposure, that's what we call it,
Mhm.
of like slowly like showing your body that you're safe to stand longer and longer. Um, that is a perfect way to do it, where you're like seeing that progress. And I would start to, as much as you can, it's called detective for the opposite, start to
Mhm.
see where, oh, that's interesting. When I was, super distracted talking with my girlfriend, I was on my feet longer than that and I didn't feel it the same way, right? So any of those, first of all, what it does is it trains our brain to look for when it feels better instead of just looking for when it feels worse. Because sometimes we don't even realize, we're like, oh, it's actually not hurting like 50% of the time because I'm not always up, I'm not on my feet, but I say it hurts all the time. You know what I mean? It's just like sometimes
Yeah.
we just kind of generalize. And when we actually look at it, we just, again, we want to be more accepting. We want to be more neutral. We want to be less fearful of the pain so that the brain produces it less and less.
Okay. I mean, I think it'd be beneficial to be less fearful
Yeah.
anyways. And I just
Yes.
think I help like convincing myself.
Yes. That's
Like,
where,
I don't know.
yeah. That's where the beliefs, like they can be so powerful. Just notice, detective for the opposite. You can be your own best evidence. Um, but yeah, definitely like noticing. I was actually going to even reference the pain catastrophizing scale. I'm not going to read all of it right now, so I'm not going to look it up. But basically, the idea is, excuse me, the way that we react to pain matters. So when we react with catastrophizing, they've actually done research that people who catastrophize their pain, like I was saying earlier, their recoveries after surgery are slower. They're more likely to get new acute pain. They're more likely for acute pain to turn chronic. And catastrophizing, when you read through the things, it's not like super dramatic. It's like, I keep thinking about the pain. I think about other painful experiences. I keep
Yeah.
hoping that the pain will end. Like that resistance and that fear and that like just not being in the present moment but being in the future or the past, and
Yeah,
really
I'm definitely a catastrophizer.
and magnifying, yeah, that actually is like a volume knob for pain. So what if nothing else, you could start to notice those thoughts and just be like, oh, there's my brain catastrophizing, work on that feeling safe state, like the glimmers like we talked about, and then see what your pain does. If nothing else, you don't have to fully believe it's not structural in order to make progress. But I would
Mhm.
keep in mind that I don't think I I would really be resistant to hearing like this is never going to heal. Like, I don't understand why he would ever tell you that. I just don't understand why he would say that if he knows about pain science.
Well, he said that he's not sure if I have a neuroma, but in his experience, like neuromas tend to sort of go up and down. And
Oh, well, so like my foot, I could say my foot has never healed, or I could say when I'm stressed out and I'm wearing certain shoes, then I feel this thing in my foot. And I also check in with my nervous system and say, I know it's not the shoes and I know it's not my foot because other times I wear those shoes and I don't have it. So is it
okay,
like that? Like
this,
I have a propensity to have that thing,
yeah,
and
I mean, he
it's
just
never
said,
healed.
I mean, he's just one person, but like, I don't, yeah, he was like, you're safe to move, just keep trying to like increase your movement and
Yeah.
ride the wave of feeling better.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I,
Some of those little, fine tuning those beliefs about like, I'm never going to heal. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just knowing that that's something that made an impact on you. I would just
yeah,
get really curious when you might notice that thought come up when you have pain again. And so when you have sensation, the best thing you can do is react neutrally, as much as you can, right? You know what I mean? Like start to do somatic tracking,
mhm,
or I don't know if you've experimented with graded exposure. That's like doing it in your mind before you do it in real life, doing it with
oh,
joy and happiness and,
okay.
gratitude. That can convince your brain and body that you're safe. Not catastrophizing, all those things.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Yeah, good questions. I think they probably helped a lot of people. So I'm glad we like went through all of that, and they were good general questions. Awesome. Okay, so there was a question here on triggers. Um, any advice on triggers? Here's the example. When I first got sick, I was on the bus a lot over commuting and working, and now the bus is a trigger and I feel overstimulated a lot, especially on the bus. Yeah, totally makes sense. And that's part of it, right? Just being like, okay, it makes sense. So much of the stuff with our nervous system, it's like allowing that it makes sense and allowing that it's there rather than resisting it. um so the graded exposure actually would be really good for this. I've helped people with like imagining going on a plane, could be for public speaking, it could be for walking or any painful thing physically. Um, and similar for digestive issues, yes, you could have a trigger of like broccoli, you know what I mean? Like it could be a trigger of like when I eat this, I'm gonna feel this. Um, so any of those kind of triggers, what you could do is this graded exposure. And graded exposure is imagining it. Actually, we could do a little example if someone wants to volunteer. If not, I can talk you through it and just explain it, but it might be more fun to do a live example if you want. Okay, so is all pain technically in your head? Well, yes, because the brain is what makes pain. Like literally, even if you have a cut or a broken bone, the brain is what determines how much pain is created or not about it. So could a person break a bone or something else physically damaging and not have pain? Yeah, that does happen sometimes, like those cases where they're in extreme stress, being chased by a tiger, for example, right? They're being chased and they could have they could break their ankle and not feel it until they stop, until that stressful time is over. So definitely there are examples of people creating pain where there is no injury in placebo type studies. There are examples of people having a physical thing that doesn't cause them pain. So yeah, I mean, definitely those are the extremes, that someone would break a bone and not have pain, but you know, it does happen. Why was this? I feel like there was some case even that I heard of someone going in and not realizing that but anyway, pain is a construct of the brain. It always is. If you had a cut on your finger, the tissue receptors would send information up to your brain, but the pain is not created in the tissue. So the pain is really kind of a conglomeration of what's happening at the tissue level and how our brain interprets it and the priority that it's giving it. There might be times that I've had times where I've like scratched myself and not realized till later, till I was like home and like sitting down or whatever, right? So pain is a construct of the brain. We just know that from neuroscience now. And they even say it's a function of the consciousness. So when you're not feeling it, it's not there. It's not like you're ignoring it. It's like, if you're not feeling it in that time, the pain's not being produced by the brain. So the more you can, I'll just wrap up with this, the more you can be curious about those symptoms and the signals and react to them with less catastrophizing, with less fear, with more curiosity, with more, kind of other descriptions, noticing detective for the opposite, all of that builds that case for your brain that you're safe, that these patterns can be extinguished, and it will produce them less and less the less we're feeding it with fear, and the more we're just living our lives and doing other things rather than focusing on all this, like, I've got to do all this strengthening and healing and focusing on this fixing the pain, versus like going out and doing things that are fun and regulating for your nervous system because they feel good and they're self-care, and put less pressure on yourselves. That's the last thing I'll say, right? Have more fun, do more self-regulation, place an emphasis on your emotions over all those people that you're serving and being nice to. Like, start to really be nicer to yourself. Yeah, I think that's it in summary. I was like, I'll leave with just a couple words of advice, and then the more I get going, I'm like, and this and this. Okay, you guys, you're so welcome. A few people saying thank you. Thanks for coming. I mean, I'm always happy to just like talk, but it's fun to have other people here too and people asking questions. So thanks for those of you who participated. I know it's asking a lot on our nervous systems to get on and have a call recorded and ask questions and blah, blah, blah. So thank you so much. And for being examples for others. And I will talk to you guys later. Be in touch. Okay. Bye-bye. Have a good night. Good weekend. Bye.